The industry's landscape has changed beyond recognition these past few years as online gaming has exploded in popularity. Experiences focused on multiplayer offerings or being live service titles have become very common, and even those that are single-player games often end up going for the open-world approach in order to maximize player engagement. Linear, focused single-player games, then, are a lot less common than they once used to be. But though they're no longer the dominant style of games, that doesn't mean that they've gone completely extinct. In the past few years, there have been quite a few excellent linear single-player titles, and in this feature, we'll be taking a look at the best of the best. Do note that this list is completely in random order. You'll also notice that some of the games in this feature have multiplayer components, but for the purposes of this list, we'll only be considering their single-player campaigns. So, with all of that out of the way, let's begin with Part 1. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Kojima Productions tried for a long time to create an action game focusing on Cyborg Ninja Raiden, but when they realized they weren't getting anywhere with that concept, they turned to Platinum Games for help, which turned out to be the best decision they could have ever made. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is Platinum at its best. Excellent, stylish combat that makes you feel like an absolute badass is the biggest of this game's many strengths. It's not your typical Metal Gear experience, sure, but man, is it good. Metro 2033. About a decade ago, the first-person shooter genre saw a major shift in priorities, foregoing the single-player narrative-driven nature that so many shooters had adopted in the past, and choosing instead to focus on multiplayer offerings. 4A Games' Metro 2033, inspired by Russian author Dmitry Glukovsky's works, was a throwback to the kind of experiences the likes of Half-Life had delivered, and was absolutely stunning. It blended horror and action perfectly, and presented a stark and harsh setting in the most believable way possible. The Metro series is a darling of millions, and looking at how it started out, it's easy to see why. The Evil Within. The Evil Within is an excellent atmospheric, foreboding game full of vivid and bizarre imagery, proper scares, and a bucket load of memorable moments that stayed with you long after you were done with it. Was it a perfect game? No, but if ever there was a game that could illustrate what the phrase "greater than the sum of its parts" means, it's The Evil Within. Dead Space. When the all-time greats of the survival horror genre are spoken about, there are very few who don't mention Dead Space. Visceral's thrilling, terrifying, atmospheric science fiction adventure is unlike anything you will ever experience. It's disturbing, it's horrifyingly gruesome, its setting is vivid and imaginative, and brought to life excellently with constant tension that never lets up. It's a shame that Dead Space will probably never see another entry, because at its peak, the series was truly untouchable. Doom. If Wolfenstein is one of the pillars that the first-person shooter genre stands on, then so is Doom. And 2016's Doom brought this legendary franchise to life even better than the New Order did for Wolfenstein. It captured the essence of what makes Doom, Doom. Romping through hell to kill armies of demons and monsters in the most gruesome ways possible, while a metal, thumping soundtrack blares in the background. That's what Doom is about, and the 2016 release captured that perfectly. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Wolfenstein is one of the most influential franchises this industry has ever seen, to the point it pretty much created an entire genre. After a long hiatus, Machine Games brought it back with great results in 2014 with The New Order. 2017's The New Colossus, however, was an instant classic. With an excellent, engaging narrative, brilliantly written characters you couldn't help but love or hate, and performances from actors that really sold the game's wacky world and the story it presented. Wolfenstein 2 was a memorable journey from start to finish. Combine that with thumping, impactful shooting, and you have a game that is as hard to put down as it is easy to love. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2, the 1998 PlayStation classic, is often considered one of the best Resident Evil games ever made, one of the best games on the PlayStation 1's library, and a gold standard of quality in the survival horror genre. Going back to reimagine it in such a drastic way was a risky move for Capcom, but it paid off in spades. The 2019 remake of Resident Evil 2 perfectly captures everything that made the original so good, while also modernizing it with great aplomb. Now, it's not only one of the best games in the genre and the franchise, it's also a benchmark for how to remake beloved classics. Gears of War 3. Multiplayer offerings are usually the centerpiece in most Gears of War titles, but Gears of War 3 was truly an all-rounder. Sure, it had an excellent suite of online offerings, but its campaign stands as one of the best we've ever seen in a third-person shooter. It brought the trilogy's story to a close in a satisfactory way, while delivering several memorable and heart-wrenching moments throughout its story. All of that, of course, was backed up by the series' excellent cover shooting mechanics. Put together, Gears of War 3 was probably one of the best exclusives Microsoft released for the Xbox 360, and is perhaps the greatest the series has been to date. Persona 5. Speaking of mammoth PS4 exclusives, Atlus's Persona games have always held a special place in the hearts of a small but strong niche audience. But with Persona 5, they broke into the mainstream, and for good reason. Persona 5 is long and winding, sure, and the very thought of beginning a playthrough of a 100-hour game can seem daunting at the best of times. But once you get into it, there's nothing quite like it. It has all the hallmarks of a Persona game: an incredible sense of style, wonderful music, memorable characters, a great combat system, and life sim aspects that work within its framework as an RPG to great effect. Metal Gear Solid 4: Guns of the Patriots. Ending the story of Solid Snake and Big Boss after what had been a winding and convoluted saga was no easy task, and though some might say that Metal Gear Solid 4 didn't achieve that task in the best way possible, there's no denying that it was an admirable effort. It was a truly sweeping epic, a love letter to fans of the series, overflowing with memorable moments that would stay with audiences forever. Guns of the Patriots is an imperfect gem, but no one can deny that it is indeed a gem. Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call Uncharted 2 one of the most influential games to have released over the last 10 years. Though Uncharted 1 was a great game in its own right, with Among Thieves, Naughty Dog perfected the art of interactive storytelling and bombastic Hollywood-esque action. Uncharted 2 was a watershed moment for this industry, and the mark it made on video games is clear to see to this day, and will be for a long time to come. Mass Effect 2. Arguably the greatest game that BioWare ever made, and looking at all of the games to have come out of the Canadian studio in its long and illustrious history, that's a huge achievement. Mass Effect 2 was a game with proper choices and consequences and real stakes, with almost every major decision you made coming back to impact the story in some way throughout its runtime. Its cast of characters is perhaps the best ensemble we've ever seen in a video game, while the game also stands as a rare example of how to streamline mechanics properly. Super Mario Galaxy 2. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is platforming perfection. Though cynics might look at it as little more than Galaxy 1.5, with this classic Wii title, Nintendo took everything that they had accomplished in the already excellent first title and cranked it all up to 11. It displays a unique strength in level design like very few games ever have, and is never afraid to throw bizarre yet creative new ideas at players on a near constant basis. Bloodborne. If we had to pick one game from the bejeweled lineup of games that From Software has developed over the last decade as the best of the best, it'd definitely have to be Bloodborne. That is how good it is. It's a refinement and perfection of everything the studio's games have ever been about in every way possible. A perfect balance of challenge and gratification, a fast and thrilling combat system, an excellent setting steeped in engaging lore and chilling atmosphere, ingenious level design, evocative and stunning art. Bloodborne is truly an all-time great, and even in the PS4's stunning library of exclusives, it stands shoulder to shoulder with even the biggest giants. The Last of Us. But Uncharted 2 wasn't the only Naughty Dog developed game of the 7th console generation that took the world by storm. There was also The Last of Us, which arguably made an even bigger impact than Uncharted 2 did, taking storytelling in video games to heights that had never been reached before. It set the standard for characters, narrative, writing, and acting, and did it all in a setting that was so thoroughly crafted and mechanics that melded with the tone and story so perfectly. Really, the entire package was almost perfect as a whole. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.